Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now let's get started. Most mornings start the same. Coffee, keys, open the shop by 10, count the cash drawer, check the locks. But that day, something felt off the second I stepped outside. Not wrong exactly, just hollow, like the air had emptied out of everything. I'm Mitch Hollis. I own Hollis Guns and Ammo just outside Springfield, Missouri. East side, right off Highway 60. Built it myself nearly 20 years ago. Just a squat brick box with steel doors, concrete slab floors, and racks I anchored so deep into the foundation you'd need a jackhammer to pull one loose. I never wanted a flashy place. I wanted something that could hold if things ever went bad, and things went bad faster than I ever thought possible. The morning was too quiet. No traffic out front, not even the old boys who usually stop in for a browse and a story. The sky had that pale, chalky color it gets when a cold front's about to roll in, even though the calendar still said September. I flipped the sign to open, but didn't get a single knock on the door. It felt like the whole block was holding its breath. First customer was a guy I didn't know. Mid-30s, suit jacket over jeans, looked tired. Said he worked down at Mercy Hospital and wanted to buy a home defense shotgun. That part didn't sit right. ER docs don't usually walk in and buy 12 gauges before lunch. I showed him a Mossberg 500 with a ghost ring sight. Good utility weapon, solid action, nothing flashy. He asked if I had slug rounds. Not buck, not bird, slug. Said he wanted something that would drop something big in one shot. He didn't look at the price, didn't ask how many rounds came in the box, just paid cash and asked if I'd heard anything about the lockdown. Lockdown? He nodded. Said the hospital closed 2 floors that morning, evacuated patients, and nobody was talking about it. Just infection control protocol. Staff were told to stay inside or go home and stay off the phone. That's when I knew something was wrong. I've got police scanners set up in the back. 1 analog, 1 digital for trunked comms, patched through to an old Motorola base I got used from a firehouse auction. I kept the volume low, tuned to Greene County emergency band. Usually just chatter, traffic stops, domestic calls, noise complaints. But today, nothing. Just one odd bulletin from OEM at 9:37 hours. Local shelter-in-place advisory for Central Springfield, pending confirmation from health services. No explanation, no follow-up. Doc handed me his driver's license before I even asked, still clipped to his hospital badge. Said he was in a hurry but not shady. I ran the 4473 form through the system, got an instant proceed, and boxed up the Mossberg. He paid cash, no small talk, and walked out before I could even offer him a receipt. Something in my gut told me that was the last quiet customer I was going to have. At 11:15, the calls started coming in. First from Marcus down at Hollis Feed and Grain, my cousin on my dad's side. He sounded out of breath. Said something was happening at the Walmart on South Campbell. People running. Someone bit a clerk. And then the same guy took 2 shots to the chest from a responding officer and didn't go down. By 11:30, local AM radio was off the air. Both KSGF and KWTO just cut to static. Cell signal didn't drop entirely, but calls started lagging. I sent a text to my wife. She was visiting her sister in Rolla for the weekend, and told her to stay put, keep the doors locked, and not to come back till I said so. She never replied. By noon, I stopped pretending it was a normal day. Pulled down the window shutters. 3/8-inch steel slide-ins I installed myself after the 2011 tornado season. Brought every case weapon to the back room. Set up a barricade behind the register and checked every mag. I've got ARs, lever actions, revolvers, you name it, and plenty of ammo to keep 'em fed. Not much food though, just some MREs, a pack of protein bars in my backpack, and then black coffee. Then came the first real test. At 12:42, I saw movement outside the front door. A teenage girl, maybe 16, barefoot, dirty hospital gown, blood across her face like she walked through a windshield. She wasn't crying or screaming, just staring straight into the glass like she recognized me. I didn't move. She started tapping on the glass, then scratching, then she screamed, not like she was scared. It was deeper than a human scream, wrong pitch, like metal tearing. That's when I saw more behind her. 3 men, one dragging what was left of his foot, one hunched with a huge neck and chest, like something had swollen under the skin. The last one was bent backward at the waist, walking like a spider fast. They didn't move like people, didn't call for help, just watched the store like they knew what was inside. I'd seen dead animals move better. They didn't break the glass. Not yet. But the one with the bent spine started pacing the front of the building, back and forth, testing corners like it was learning the layout. That's when I made the decision to fall back. I grabbed 3 ARs, my personal Stag 15, a Daniel Defense with a red dot, and an old Bushmaster with iron sights. Took 12 full mags and loaded them into an old dry box I kept under the floor hatch. At 1:10 p.m, the power cut. No warning. Just that soft click of every LED and light fixture dying at once. The radio rack in the back flickered off. My watch still worked. Solar Casio G-Shock can take a bullet and keep ticking. But the whole shop dropped into silence. Then the alarm went off. Not mine, the one from next door, the old mini-mart building that shut down last year. I never bothered with it, but that sound triggered something in the things outside. They snapped to attention like dogs hearing a whistle. They ran, not shuffled, ran. I saw 2 of them bolt across the street toward the sound. The girl didn't follow. She slammed her face into my door like she wanted through it. Left blood, backed up, did it again. I aimed the AR through the side viewing slit and watched her head split open like an overripe melon. She didn't fall, just stood there, twitching, mouth wide open. Then she ran toward the back alley. I didn't wait. I activated the hydraulic lock on the inner door and sealed the armory room. 10-gauge steel frame with double locking bars and a redundant key override. Then I set up in the showroom with the racks as cover. I laid out all the 5.56 12-gauge slugs and 45 caliber rounds I had, kept eyes on every window slit, and waited. It took about 20 minutes before they came back. 4 of them now, one dragging what looked like part of a deer. That thing was still twitching. Another had a hole in its chest big enough to see light through, but it moved like it didn't matter. The rules I thought I knew. About the body, about injury. They weren't holding up. One of them noticed the scent maybe, or movement through the slit. It ran at the side wall and slammed into it full force. No hesitation, just bone, muscle, and will. I fired the first shot at 138, a clean center mass. It didn't stop. Second shot, upper chest near the clavicle, still nothing. Third shot, base of the skull. It dropped. The others didn't run. They crept, circled. One tapped at the side door like it understood hinges. That's when I knew. These weren't mindless. Maybe not smart, but adaptive. At 2:12, the backup generator clicked on. The flicker of fluorescent light was almost worse than the dark. I kept it brief. Used the juice to power the cameras and recheck outside. More were coming. At least a dozen, spread in small groups. Some normal-sized, some deformed. One so tall it had to duck under the old bus stop awning. Some of their bodies bulged at the joints like pressure building up. I watched one crawl over a car like a centipede, arms bending the wrong way, fast. I disabled the backup again. Total blackout. I fired only when they pressed too close, when they started tearing siding off the adjacent structure, or when one tried to climb the vent cage. I used slugs for the larger ones, .223 for the rest. I aimed for the spine, the head, anything that looked like it mattered. Most went down fast. One didn't even blink after I put 4 in its ribcage. It took a double tap to the base of the skull before it stopped twitching. I didn't eat, didn't drink, just kept my ears open and my eyes on the slits. By 5:30 p.m., things got quiet. Not safe. Quiet. I saw fewer shapes outside. Less movement. Then I saw the girl again. The same one. Her face was broken in, but she walked fine. Something was crawling under her skin. I swear it. She stood across the street near the cracked sidewalk of the old bus stop, hands limp at her sides, head tilted like she was listening to something. Not to me, something else. Her jaw had reset wrong, or maybe just stayed broken, and it hung crooked, revealing molars and glistening tissue beneath the split cheek. The dried blood on her gown was darker now. She didn't approach, didn't run, just watched the shop like it belonged to her, like she was waiting. And then the silence broke. At 5:42 p.m., I heard the first sound of tires. Fast ones. The kind of screech you only get when rubber tears against asphalt. It came from the east end of the block, just past the intersection near the overgrown Sonic that closed during the pandemic. A white Ford Explorer blew through the turn, skidded sideways into a parked sedan, and sent it crashing into the stop sign. Glass burst. The impact echoed through the dead street like a thunderclap. I ducked low behind the checkout counter and peeked through the slit. The SUV was still moving. The driver seemed to be fighting the wheel. Inside, shapes flailed. Then the passenger window burst from the inside, not the impact. That's when I saw her. Someone in the back seat. A man. No, not a man anymore. He launched himself forward from the rear, his entire upper body arched over the front seat. He clawed at the driver, jerking her hair back as the Explorer mounted the curb, slammed through the sidewalk bench, and crashed headlong into the $+ storefront across from me. The windshield crumpled, the hood buckled like tinfoil, but the infected man didn't stop. He burst through the front passenger window before the dust even settled, skin torn, half of one foot missing, and sprinted out of sight toward the alley. For a second, no one moved. The air seemed to pause. Then I heard the screaming. 2 girls, late teens at best, pushed their way out through the crumpled passenger door. One was limping, the other was helping her along. Blood smeared both of them, but it didn't look like bite wounds. Cuts, impact damage, maybe glass. They made it halfway down the sidewalk before one of them glanced up and spotted the girl in the hospital gown. The broken-faced one. The infected girl didn't lunge or snarl. She walked forward like she was meeting a friend. The limping girl shrieked and pulled her sister toward the middle of the street. That's when I acted. I opened the interior lock halfway and slipped out through the loading bay. My boots hit the cracked asphalt like thunder. I raised one hand, waved it wide. "Hey!" I called across the street. "Over here! Get inside! Now!" They stopped. Both girls turned to look. I saw raw panic in their faces. The taller one, darker hair, maybe 18, hesitated, then grabbed her sister's hand and ran. They crossed the street in seconds, stumbling over debris, past the car wreck. I held the steel back door open with one hand and kept the AR aimed downrange with the other. The girl in the gown didn't follow. She just stood in the middle of the intersection and turned her head sharply, watching us like a dog sizing up prey. The sisters rushed inside. I slammed the door, spun the 3-bar lock, and dropped the pin lever for good measure. The silence that followed was thick, like concrete pressing in. They were both breathing hard, the younger one crying now. "You're safe," I said. Not entirely sure it was true. "You're inside. Just stay away from the windows." The older one spoke first. "Thank you. We didn't know where to go. The radio stopped working. Phones too. We saw the smoke from downtown and just started driving." She swallowed, looked like she wanted to be sick. "That man, in the car, he was my neighbor. He lived across the street. I don't know how he got like that." I handed them each a water bottle from the emergency crate and led them into the showroom. I cleared the center aisle, moved gear aside, and pulled 2 folding chairs from under the range table. The older girl sat. The younger one collapsed. "My name's Mitch," I said. "I run this place. You can call it a safe house for now. You two got names." "I'm Jenna," said the older one. "She's Ella. She's 15. Ella had a cut on her shoulder and blood on her sneakers. I motioned her toward the small first aid station near the fireproof cabinet. "Sit tight. Let me check that." It wasn't deep, just a glancing cut. I sprayed antiseptic and wrapped it with gauze. She flinched once but didn't say anything. Tough kid. "Are you alone here?" Jenna asked, eyes scanning the walls lined with black rifles and matte finish scopes. "I was," I said. "Wasn't planning to stay that way, but it happened fast. You saw it too, right? How fast they move." She nodded slowly. "It's not like anything I've ever seen. They don't act like they're sick. They act like they're predators." "Yeah, like they're made to do this. I didn't say what I was thinking, that maybe they were. I heard movement again outside, just a faint scrape. I muted the overhead emergency light, stepped back toward the viewing slit, and peeked out. One of the larger ones was back. This one had no shirt, ribs visible beneath waxy skin. Its left arm dragged behind it, dislocated, probably shattered, but it used the other to crawl across the hood of the Explorer like it didn't feel pain. Another followed behind it, walking upright but fast. Its legs were bowed outward and covered in mottled bruising. It wasn't the same group from earlier. "They're regrouping," I muttered. I didn't realize I said it out loud. Jenna was at my side now. "What do we do?" I pointed to the floor hatch behind the counter. "We go below. There's a storage room, cinder block and steel. I didn't build it to be a bunker, but it's the closest thing I've got." We moved quick. I handed Jenna a revolver, a Smith & Wesson 686 with a 6-inch barrel in .357 Magnum, and showed her how to check the cylinder. She held it with steady hands, though her knuckles were white. Ella got a folding knife, just in case. I didn't like arming kids, but I liked the idea of leaving her defenseless even less. We went down. The lower room was tight but solid. Shelves lined with reloading gear, sealed ammo tins, and backup power cells. The air smelled of solvent and rubber. I sealed the hatch behind us and flipped on the red emergency lamp. We stayed silent for a while. Then the noise started above. Footsteps. Not many, just a couple. They didn't run. They circled. Something thumped against the register counter, then paused, scratching, a chair scraping. Something pulled metal along tile. One of them was exploring. I realized too late the side maintenance door must not have latched after the power cut. That, or they pried it. Those reinforced frames were good, but not foolproof. Not against something determined. The worst part? No snarls, no wails. Just methodical noise, like they were feeling their way around. Ella whimpered. I put a hand on her shoulder and nodded once. "Just breathe." She bit her lip but didn't make another sound. We stayed underground for nearly an hour. When the sounds faded, I went up first. Room was empty. Door hadn't been breached, but something was missing. 3 rounds. Gone from the bench stock I left open. The revolver I gave Jenna. 2 empty chambers. She didn't meet my eyes when I came back down. I didn't press. Not yet. At 7:23 p.m., we heard the sirens. Not emergency ones. Military ones. Distant, fading. Somewhere near the National Guard Armory off Division Street. The noise rolled low across the city like a wounded hornet. Then it stopped. No follow-up, no announcements. Just one long, wailing pulse and silence. I checked the old shortwave radio I had tucked under a lead-lined case. Switched bands, adjusted gain, tried to find anything. One channel played a continuous tone. 5 beeps, pause, then repeat. I recognized it. Not an emergency broadcast, a decommission code, an abandoned signal. Something was wrong at the federal level. Jenna sat near the ammo shelves, staring at the floor. "Is it like this everywhere?" she asked. I told her the truth. "I don't know, but if it isn't now, it will be soon." Outside, the sun was sinking fast. The sky had turned that dirty orange that clings to Missouri in late September, storm-colored but dry. I saw movement again, this time farther down the street, past the wrecked Explorer. 2 infected, dragging something. A body, still alive, or at least it had been recently. Legs kicked weakly, arms flailed, as if trying to grip the pavement. One of the creatures had no lower jaw, just a tongue dangling from its shredded throat, slapping wetly against its chest as it moved. The other was covered in bruises and burns, like it had already caught fire and kept going. They weren't hunting, they were collecting. I ducked back behind the slit and killed the light again. More figures crept into view. It wasn't a horde, yet, but it was growing. 4 more shapes limped past the gas station across the way. One climbed onto the hood of a parked vehicle and crouched like an ape, head tilted toward the sky, sniffing. I heard the broken whistle of its breath through the reinforced slit, even through layers of glass and steel. Then, it let out this awful bark. Short, guttural, like a fox call through a megaphone. It echoed down the street. Answering sounds came back, distant, scattered. But they were coming. Every gunshot, every crash, every scream drew more, like a dinner bell, ringing louder each time. I turned to Jenna and Ella. They were still in the back, huddled in the armory corner. Ella wrapped in a tan military poncho I kept for cold nights. Jenna had one of my old hunting packs on her lap, half filled with energy bars, water bottles, and a box of .357 rounds I'd handed her earlier. She glanced up when she saw my face. "We can't stay," I said. "They're surrounding the building, slowly, probably attracted by the wreck or the gunfire before that. They're not coming all at once. They're smart enough to linger, to look. But eventually, one of them's gonna try the side door, or the vent cage, or the roof. And if one finds a way in, the rest will follow." Jenna didn't argue. "Where do we go?" I paused, rubbed a hand over my jaw. "How far is your place?" She hesitated. "We don't really have a place," she said. "Not anymore." "What do you mean?" "We moved here last month. I graduated early, trying to get into OTC's nursing program. Ella's been doing remote classes. Our apartment's on Fremont near the railroad cut. Top floor, but no generator. The neighbors were weird. Yesterday someone banged on our door and just screamed through it. We ran this morning and didn't go back." I leaned against the doorframe, weighing options. No other family nearby? Friends? Somewhere out of town? "Our parents passed when we were younger," Jenna said. "Car accident, back in Illinois. It's just us now." I didn't like the sound of that. Two girls alone in a city about to go dark and loud and full of teeth. Springfield wasn't big, but it wasn't small either, and all it took was one highway collapse, one panicked convoy, one bad military order to turn it into a cage. "My place," I said finally. "We go to my place. That's all I can offer. If you agree, we need to move now." I saw a flicker of suspicion in Jenna's eyes, but she didn't say anything. "It's about 11 miles east, out past Rogersville. Back road property. Big lot, wooded. I've got fuel, food, deep freezer, backup water, even a spare generator and satellite phone. Used to be my father's land. Not a bunker, but it's defensible. If we move now, we've got a chance before it gets worse." She nodded. Not enthusiastic. Resigned, maybe. Ella just gripped her sister's arm and gave me the smallest nod I'd seen all day. I didn't waste another second. We started packing. I cleared the back table and laid out crates of ammunition, stacking what I knew we could realistically carry. 5.56, 308, 12 gauge, 4570, and a couple boxes of 223 soft points I'd prepped for coyote season. I picked 5 rifles, 2 AR platforms, 1 bolt-action Remington 700 chambered in 308, a 12-gauge Benelli M4, and my personal lever-action Henry chambered in 4570, an unforgiving beast, fed with hardcast rounds meant for animals that didn't spook easy. Then I grabbed my Glock 19, 4 mags loaded and ready, and handed one of the ARs to Jenna. I showed her how to run the charging handle, how to switch from safe to semi, how to seat the magazine with a firm slap. She took it all in without hesitation, didn't flinch, didn't ask dumb questions. I liked that. For Ella, I picked a folding stock 22, lightweight, quiet, and better than nothing, loaded with hollow points. Not ideal for stopping power, but it could keep her alive if something got too close. She cradled it like she'd been to the range before. No fear in her grip, just focus. Behind the register, I opened the wall locker and unlocked the last drawer, pulling out 2 suppressed pistols. I'd bought them years ago legally, with tax stamps and signed paperwork, back when there was still time to be cautious. One was a SIG P226 with a rugged full-size suppressor, the other, a Beretta 92 with a threaded barrel. I handed the Beretta to Jenna, explained how to line up the irons in low light. She checked the slide, chambered around, and nodded. I holstered the SIG in my waistband and tightened the strap. "Suppressors only help a little," I said as I double-checked the seal on a case of subsonic rounds. "But in the dark, quiet is gold." Next came the packs. I kept a few mol frames stocked near the range locker for emergencies. tourniquets, rolled bandages, chemical cold packs, iodine tablets, MREs, lighters, batteries, a crank radio, and a half-dozen single-use thermal blankets. We took 2 packs and stripped the third for extras. I added a 100-foot roll of paracord, 2 fixed-blade utility knives, 4 emergency glow sticks, and an old lensatic compass I trusted more than any GPS. I kept it clipped to my belt, always had. We weren't packing for long-term survival, just long enough to get out, get somewhere defensible, and live through the night. Then I took one last walk through the shop. I'd built this place with my hands, placed every peg, labeled every shelf. I remembered the first customer I sold a rifle to, a middle-aged vet trying to take his son deer hunting for the first time. I remembered the old-timers who came in just to talk about scopes and cartridges and load weights. This place had history, and I was leaving it behind. I locked the main vault, not for the looters. There wouldn't be looters soon, just scavengers. But out of habit, I cut the power to the generator, dropped the protective shutters over the back door, and opened the loading bay slowly. Outside, the shadows had deepened. Not quite night, but that burnt gold dusk where every movement looks like something coming to get you. The parking lot was still. The Explorer still smoldered where the radiator had burst. I saw the girl in the hospital gown again, farther now, standing under a dead billboard frame like she was part of the rusted metal. And she was watching us. We moved quickly. I unlocked my pickup, forest green, long bed, with a shell cover and mud tires. Diesel. The last maintenance was 3 weeks ago, and she still purred like a bear. I kept a full tank in back and 2 jerry cans under a tarp. Ella in first, I whispered. Then Jenna, keep your heads down. If anything moves near the truck, don't wait. Shoot center mass and keep pulling until it drops. They nodded. I loaded the gear into the bed, tied the packs to the anchor hooks, and closed the shell. I took one last look at the shop. No alarm, no message. Just the stillness of a place that had already seen its last good day. I got in the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine roared. So did something nearby. From the alley to our right, 2 infected figures burst into view. One crouching, knuckles dragging, the other sprinting on all fours with cracked skin sloughing off its back. It launched at the rear of the truck, slammed against the side window hard enough to spider the glass. Jenna leaned out the window and fired 3 times. Muzzle flashes lit the dusk. One round caught the crouched figure in the neck. It didn't fall, but it stopped moving long enough for me to hit the gas. We peeled out of the lot, fishtailed onto the road, and sped east on Cherry Street, past dark storefronts and dead traffic lights. The radio was still down. My phone showed 1 bar, no data. I didn't ask where the police were. I already knew. We cut through the south end of town, using back roads I'd memorized years ago, zigzagging past the outskirts of Sikiota Park, down through a shortcut behind the nature center, and onto the 2-lane stretch toward Rogersville. The world got darker the farther we went. No headlights behind us, no aircraft overhead, just trees, fence posts, and silence. It wasn't a peaceful silence, not the kind you get on a slow fishing day or an early morning hunt. This was the hush of something holding its breath, just long enough to make you question whether you were really alone. The road ahead curled east through low hills, where power lines ran like skeletal veins along the treetops. Most of the houses were set back off the road, concealed by fences and thick oaks, with porch lights that never came on. My property sat off highway, past a split in the road near an old red barn with a rusted grain silo. I'd owned the land since the late 2000s, bought it after my dad passed, and left me the deed. 22 acres of mostly wooded terrain, a winding gravel driveway, a main house, a workshop, and a raised shooting deck overlooking a ravine. The place was built to breathe, not to fight off monsters, but it was isolated, and that counted for something. As we turned onto the gravel, headlights caught the wooden sign I carved years ago. Just read, Hollis, still nailed to the same weather-beaten post. We passed between rows of trees, branches brushing against the truck's shell with dry, whispering strokes. My tires cracked through fallen walnuts and the occasional loose stone. I slowed to a crawl as the house came into view. 2 stories, tan siding, tin roof I replaced myself 2 summers back after a windstorm tore the old one half off. The porch light was wired to a solar backup. It flickered weakly when we rolled up, casting shadows that danced across the railing. I pulled around back and parked under the awning between the house and workshop. We sat for a moment in the truck. Jenna looked out at the tree line. Ella had gone quiet again, arms folded around the rifle like a stuffed animal. "Leave everything here for now," I said. "We'll grab the essentials after we check the house." We moved as one, keeping low, weapons shouldered. I keyed in the garage door code, an old mechanical model with no Wi-Fi, and the motor wheezed to life, lifting the panel door with an uneven groan. The garage was just as I left it. Pegboard tools, half-finished workbench project, a stack of firewood, and a spare generator in the corner. I unlocked the inner door and cleared the main floor with the AR slung ready, sweeping each corner the way I drilled myself to do for years. I called the girls over and told them everything was in order, but the moment they stepped inside, I felt a flicker of panic. Out of habit, I scanned the place, trying to remember if I'd left anything out. I'd cleaned 2 days earlier. The dishes were still on the drying rack. My coffee mug from yesterday sat in the sink. The microwave clock blinked 12, like it always did after a power reset. The fridge wasn't running, but the contents were still cold. Backup battery must have kicked in before it drained out. We secured the main level, then moved upstairs. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, windows closed, blinds drawn, no sign of disturbance, no strange smells, no dragged marks, no blood. "Place looks untouched," Jenna said. She didn't put her rifle down. I guided them to the guest room, originally meant for my nephew during summers. Twin beds, spare clothes, thick door with a bolt. It wasn't much, but it would hold. "Keep the window locked," I told them. "If you hear anything, don't open the door. Just call for me." They didn't argue. I stepped back out to the hallway and descended into the cellar. The basement was half finished, lined with cinder block and insulated panels. I'd turned it into a root cellar and partial bunker during that long winter in 2014, when ice storms knocked out the grid and FEMA trailers popped up across the Ozarks. I didn't have a panic room, but I had shelves of freeze-dried meals, a 3-month water supply, propane tanks, and enough spare mags to outfit a platoon. That night, I set up 3 motion detectors along the tree line, one facing the long gravel drive, the others watching the perimeter near the slope that led to the dry creek bed. The wind was starting to pick up, shaking branches like bones. I walked the full edge of the property with a thermal monocular in one hand and the Henry 4570 in the other, checking for heat signatures. Saw nothing but raccoons and a curious whitetail that stared at me through the brush before darting off. I returned to the house just after 9 p.m. Jenna was sitting on the stairs, rifle across her lap. She looked like she hadn't moved. I offered her a warm bottle of water and a vacuum-sealed granola bar. She took both but didn't eat. "You trust this place?" she asked. "It's as good as we'll get this close to the city," I said. "But it won't hold forever." "No," I admitted. "Nowhere will." We didn't speak after that. Just before 10 p.m., the first motion sensor beeped. Short, high-pitched chirp, east sector, front woods. I clicked the monocular back on and stepped onto the porch. Lights off, crouched low. Through the thermal lens, I saw movement. One figure, walking slowly, not sprinting, not flailing, just gliding through the brush like it had been here before. I held my breath. It stopped near the tree stump I used for splitting wood. Stood there, head turned toward the house. I didn't shoot, I just watched. Then it turned and walked back into the trees. I killed the motion sensor beep and rearmed it silently. Inside, I told Jenna and Ella to get some rest. They didn't argue. I stayed in the den, sitting low in the armchair with the 4570 across my lap, watching the front windows like something might press against them at any second. The world outside the window was dark, but it was no longer still. Movement stirred in the trees like ripples in water. Small shapes, large ones, not consistent. They didn't walk together like a mob. They weren't a pack. They were something worse, curious. By midnight, 3 more alarms triggered, each time in a different zone. Each time, One figure moved through the field, lingered, and vanished. I started to wonder if they were testing the edges, not just of the property, but of me. At 12:33 a.m., I saw a new shape, massive, hunched, nearly as tall as the porch roof. It didn't walk upright. Its limbs were too long. It moved like a gorilla, but backwards. Its eyes reflected the moonlight, and they didn't blink. It stood motionless on the crest of the ridge, where the dry creek ran along the eastern edge of the property. I hadn't seen anything like it before. The other infected, deformed as they were, still resembled people. This one didn't. Its arms swayed like they were loose in the sockets, not connected to any proper joint. The flesh around its shoulders bulged as though muscle had swollen and then dried over twisted bones. It didn't pace or roar. It just stood there, crouched low, watching the house. I stayed perfectly still behind the railing, one knee on the deck, the Henry rifle across my lap, safety off. For almost 2 minutes, nothing happened. Just the wind through the trees, the creak of branches under pressure, and that thing's eyes gleaming like wet stones in the dark. Then, without sound or signal, it shifted direction, slipping sideways down the hill on all fours, and vanished into the brush like smoke. I didn't know if it was retreating or repositioning. I slipped back into the house and made a second round of checks. Windows latched, interior bolts engaged, cellar sealed. Jenna was awake. She met me at the bottom of the stairs, still holding the AR tight to her chest. "There's something out there," she said, before I could speak. "It's not like the others." "You saw it too?" She nodded slowly. I didn't know something that big could move that quietly. Ella was still asleep, or pretending to be, wrapped in the spare poncho with her rifle cradled beside her. I lowered my voice and motioned Jenna toward the den. I lit the kerosene lamp I kept in the corner, shielding the glow with a folded map. The old paper was a topo layout of the land, one I'd marked up over the years with game trails, water access, and elevation changes. "If they're watching," I said, tracing a line from the house to the back slope, "they're doing it in shifts, 2 or 3 at a time, rotating, different sizes, different patterns. We haven't seen a full wave since town. That means they're not just drawn to sound. They're tracking, probably scent too." "So what do we do?" I looked up at her. "We make a decision before daylight." She sat down slowly, as if the weight of it was starting to press into her bones. "You mean leave? Sooner or later, they'll come in numbers. And this house, good as it is, wasn't built for that. Once they breach the porch, we lose any advantage. Ammo won't save us if they come from all sides. And if that big one decides to test the siding, it might just go through the wall." She nodded grimly. "So where?" I traced farther east on the map. "There's a fire tower out in Mark Twain National Forest, old lookout station about 10 miles deeper. High elevation, narrow access path, solid wood base reinforced in the 90s. No power, but it's built for storms and bears. Not easy to reach, but manageable on foot if we take the quad trails." She looked over the map in silence for a few seconds, then said, "We'd have to move before dawn." "Exactly." We went back to prepping. I emptied the freezer into 2 soft coolers, mostly protein, nothing that needed full refrigeration. Bottled water, energy bars, iodine tabs. I cut the gear down to 2 packs and a duffel bag. The rest I buried in a pre-dug storage drum under the woodshed, a PVC-sealed cache I'd meant to upgrade for years, now serving as our fallback if this run didn't go as planned. I topped off the truck tank and drained both jerry cans into the reserve. Jenna moved with focus, checking slings, loading magazines, making sure Ella had a fitting jacket and gloves. She was efficient in that quiet, hardened way you sometimes see in people who've carried too much for too long. By 2 a.m., we were ready. The night was colder now. Not the crisp kind of cold you get in October, but the damp, bone-pressing chill that soaks through your skin and settles into your shoulders. I heard coyotes howling in the distance, closer than I liked, and something else farther off, deeper, like wind being pushed through a long pipe. It didn't match any animal I'd heard in the woods before. I killed the porch lights, cut the backup power entirely, and opened the back hatch just enough to slip through. I didn't see the big one again, but I could feel its presence out there, like the pressure of a storm behind the hills, not seen but waiting. We loaded the gear in silence. I handed Ella a flashlight but told her not to use it unless we were in total black. Jenna and I had headlamps with red filters, just enough to make out the terrain without giving ourselves away. At 2:30 a.m., we left the house behind. The truck rumbled down the gravel path, slow and quiet. I disengaged the dome lights and covered the rear tailgate lamp with duct tape. No headlights, just moonlight filtering through trees. We made it maybe a quarter-mile past the second rise when the rear motion sensor on my belt went off. Short ping, then another. 2 sectors, one northeast, one directly behind us. "Go faster," Jenna said. Not a whisper, just flat urgency. I throttled up. The tires kicked dust into the trees. I checked the mirror. Eyes. Not headlights, not animal shine. Dozens of small, pinpoint reflections like glass catching a flame. They were moving, fast, too fast. Something slammed into the tailgate. Ella screamed. "Hold tight," I barked. I took the next bend wide, scraping bark off the passenger side as we cleared a low-hanging branch. Another thud, this time against the back shell. Metal groaned. Then a crack, thin but definite. One of the rear windows shattered inward. Jenna turned, leveled her rifle through the opening, and fired. Short burst, 3 rounds. Something shrieked. Not a howl, not a human voice. Just a raw, ragged tearing sound, like air splitting open. "Reloading," she called. I took the final bend before the highway turnoff and gunned it. The truck bounced over the drainage culvert and hit asphalt like a hammer. I swung left, away from the city toward the woods. Nothing followed. Not at first. Then I saw them again. Shapes in the trees, running alongside the road. One of them leapt across a ditch like a dog and kept pace for several seconds before veering into the dark. I floored the pedal. By the time we reached the fire road turnoff, the sounds behind us were gone. Just the engine, the creak of gear, and Ella's soft breathing as she tried not to cry. The old service road wasn't paved. I slowed to avoid blowing the suspension. It wound through narrow switchbacks, pine needles thick on the ground, moonlight filtering in broken beams. It took almost 45 minutes to reach the clearing. When we did, the tower rose up like a cross between a ranger lookout and a hunting blind, built on 4 thick posts bolted into concrete slabs. I cut the engine, let the silence settle. We moved quickly, gear in hand, rifles up. I took the lead, unlocked the outer gate, and motioned Jenna and Ella to climb. 33 metal steps. 1 trapdoor, a wooden room with slotted windows and a reinforced steel plate over the main floor. Not airtight, but better than the house. We sealed it, secured the weapons, set motion sensors at the base of the tower and watched from above. That's where we were at dawn. That's where I sit now, still holding the rifle across my lap, writing this down in a weather logbook left by a forest ranger years ago. His name still carved in the cover. Jenna and Ella are asleep. I took the first watch. Still haven't woken them. Don't want to yet, because I can see movement down there again. Not one, not a few. More than I've ever seen. Shapes. Some fast, some tall, some that move in ways no human skeleton should allow. They're not trying to come up the stairs. They're waiting, watching, like they're learning, and I think they already know we're running out of places to hide. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps my channel alive. Until next time, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and trust nothing, not even the silence.